Hi guys, hope you're having a great evening. This is Fred and Sheila.
Hey guys, it's Hatfield McCoy Museum Adventures. We haven't been given our title out lately. FS investigates when it's something like this. Usually Hatfield McCoy Adventures is Museum Adventures is on the Hatfield McCoy feud or some kind of an adventure we're on. When we're investigating something, it's Fred and Sheila Investigates.
That's right.
This is this may be an interesting topic to some of you. You can look behind us there on the wall, and that is Doug Asher. Doug Asher used to be the post commander of Post 11 in London, Kentucky. Of course, London's been in the news quite a bit lately. This has got nothing to do with anything recent, well, except his book that he's written. But it's an interesting topic that's in his book that we're going to discuss. I see Lieutenant Colonel there. I'm not sure if Doug went on to become commissioner of the state police or not. I don't know. I'll know before we do part 2.
Okay.
There's probably going to be 2 parts to this story, and the reason why is Sheila and I have just ordered his book, and it won't be in for several days. So once we get the book, I'm sure we're going to touch on some other things that we see there. Right now, we're going to watch a video or in a minute, and we'll do this part from the video itself. Now, I don't know what she'll make the title of this thumbnail. Something like, did a Kentucky State Trooper commit suicide and the Kentucky State Police cover it up, calling it a line of duty death? That's the question. Did a Kentucky State Trooper commit suicide, and did the Kentucky State Police heavies, higher ups, call it a line of duty death? We have some questions. We want to start with a video with limited information.
Right.
It's from a newscast that WLEX done. Do you remember her name, Sheila?
Lee Searcy.
Lee Searcy did an interviewing Mr. Doug Asher behind me there. We've ordered the book. It was like $45 for postage and everything. But
okay.
It'll be here, and then we'll do part 2. This story's not as much about a Kentucky State Trooper, how he died, as it is about a suicide that was covered up, allegedly, by the state police. The book's title is Harlan County's Son. There's the book cover right there behind us.
You see, yeah.
Author is retired Kentucky State Trooper and Executive Doug Asher.
The second.
I've seen it. The second, and I've seen it as senior. So I'm not sure. But
see, I didn't
Doug
know.
Asher says he was a trooper for 30 years. The trooper's name in question, as far as the suicide, and some of you people there in London, I'm sure, is going to recall it, Johnny Edrington. Johnny Edrington. His obituary stated he was 34 years old, was born in Taylor County, September the 7th, 1954. Was found dead approximately 2:40 a.m. Wednesday, December the 21st, 1988.
Wow.
You guys may remember that. On Kentucky 80, 7 miles west of London, while on duty as a Kentucky State Police Trooper. He's buried at Brookside Cemetery in Campbellsville, Kentucky. We're going to go, the next video, we will be showing you a clip from both the scene of where approximate scene of where Johnny died. And we'll also take you to his cemetery, where they also hold a honorary thing every year on police Memorial Week. Yeah. And there's Johnny Edrington, 7 miles, play newscast. Okay.
Are you ready?
That?
Yep. Here we go. I gotta zoom out.
In tonight's LEX 18 Investigates, a case that's lingered for decades. A trooper fatally shot on the side of a Laurel County road. But now someone who was directly involved in the case has co-authored a book that brings into question just what happened. He says he's brought the information to Kentucky State Police before. Now, we do want to warn that this story discusses suicide. Lee Searcy has more.
In the book, Harlan County's son, a decorated war veteran, recounts growing up in eastern Kentucky, his 2 tours in Vietnam as a paratrooper, and his long 30-year career with Kentucky State Police. But it's the chapter on page 207 that retired Colonel Douglas Asher says was the hardest to write.
And I thought, well, it's time now to clear the air. Even though it's late, it's right. It's the right thing to do.
In the chapter, The Big Gray Cover-Up, the true facts behind the death investigation of Trooper Johnny Edrington, Asher goes where no one has gone before, at least publicly.
Why bring it up now? I think it's time that we cleared this thing up before we all died and can't talk back. I think it's time to clear this mess up.
Asher was the KSP post commander in London on December 20th, 1988, the night Trooper Johnny Edrington was found dead of a gunshot wound while on duty. To this day, his homicide case remains open and unsolved.
You can't solve a homicide that didn't happen.
In the book, Asher says it was the unanimous decision of all those investigators, as well as the county coroner and assistant state medical examiner, that Trooper Edrington's gunshot wound was self-inflicted. I've talked to several of them who confirmed that, including the current Laurel County coroner, who was on the scene with the coroner at the time, his father. But Asher claims he got pressure from those above him back then to investigate it as a homicide.
But the command staff, one of them went to the post before I even got back to post and told the investigators, if anybody here considers this anything other than a homicide, they don't need to be working at this post.
Asher says the evidence is what led his detectives to conclude it was not a homicide. He says his post, the local coroner, and state pathologists were essentially removed from the case.
Well, the logistics was he had the gun in his hand. There was no sign of a struggle. It was a contact wound. It was right here. He had the gun. The gun was still in his hand.
Well, this is Highway 80 in Laurel County, where Trooper Johnny Edrington was found dead from a gunshot wound. He was found lying over in a ditch that direction. Retired Colonel Asher says some higher-ups believe there were signs of a struggle because there was a dent in his hood. But Asher says his uniform appeared untouched. In our search for answers, we went to the doctor who performed the autopsy.
There was no evidence to suggest to me that I was aware of that someone else did it.
Dr. John Hunsaker was the Associate State Medical Examiner at the time.
There were 3 different gunshot residue tests taken of his hands after he was discovered, which had abundant amounts of residue.
He says after conducting the autopsy, he initially listed the manner of death as undetermined.
And you're saying no one came back to you and asked you for your professional medical opinion on the cause of death, the manner of death, excuse me.
No, I think they knew which way I was leaning.
We asked him if it was possible Edrington's death was a homicide.
Well, possible is a pretty weak standard, but sure, it's possible. Can you absolutely, quotes, absolutely rule it out? And I don't think you can absolutely rule it out, but I think it's unlikely.
How unlikely?
My view on that is that they will never find the person that killed Trooper Edrington unless they dig up his grave.
I reached out to Edrington's daughter to let her know about the story. She told me the family had no comment. Both Dr. Hunsaker and retired Colonel Asher tell us they're sympathetic to the sensitive nature of sharing these details of the case.
And Johnny Edrington was a good fella, and his family were outstanding. His parents were just outstanding people. I knew both of them well.
It's a horrible thing for a family to go through. So, like I say, I don't know the rationale, what the impulse was, the underlying impulse to conclude early on that it was a homicide, and stick to that. That was the official line.
There might be some who'd say Trooper Edrington has been dead for 35 years. Let it lie.
Let them say it. The truth is the only way to go. Even if it's ugly, even if it's hard to deal with, the easiest way out of everything is just tell the truth.
In Laurel County, Lee Searcy, LEX 18 News.
Kentucky State Police say this case remains under investigation as a murder. They say, and it's a quote, "We will not rest until the case is resolved," end quote.
Wow.
Yeah.
So guys, that's where we're at. That's the story we're going to be covering. Harlan County son writes a book about his military career, his years as a trooper. I haven't read it yet. I read the foreword and a little bit of it. And there's a couple of things that stood out in that struck me. I want to explain something to you before we get on with this story.
Okay.
I remember this story well.
Yeah.
I was a detective in Pike County at the time. And here's a thing that we did. And she'll put a picture of that on there.
That's
to
kind of
show
hard
that
to
up
see.
a lot better
Uh-huh.
at the end of the screen. That now
Yeah.
hangs in the museum. That's Johnny Edrington on the left. And that's Joseph Angelucci on the right. Joseph's dad was the Fayette County Circuit Judge for years, and he was over Kentucky Social Security Administration for years. Social Security Administration, or Workers' Comp, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Joseph Angelucci was my roommate in the police academy. 24 years old he was, and he was going to law school. He was a deputy sheriff, Fayette County deputy sheriff, and he was going to be a lawyer like his dad. But in the meantime, he loved the excitement of being a police officer, and he wanted to get that experience. Graduated from University of Kentucky. He died Thanksgiving Eve, November the 23rd, 1988. I remember it well. I remember watching the news, and they come across the screen and said Fayette County deputy's been killed. And Joseph Angelucci, my roommate in the academy. Good friends. Good friends. Joe probably shouldn't have been a police officer. He loved everybody, and he took everybody for, he was easy. He didn't see the threats, I don't believe. Joe was shot and killed with his own gun. That's how he died. He was going to take a mental patient to Eastern State, and when he tried to arrest him, the mental patient took Joe's gun from him, shot him with it. He lingered in the hospital for a couple of weeks. We all, not just us, but police officers from across Kentucky gathered at the hospital and gave blood and all this and that. We stayed down there quite a bit. And it was heartbreaking. Shot and killed with his own gun. November 88. Come up December the 20th, 88, 1 month later, shy of 3 days, and you had Johnny Edrington. Johnny Edrington. Route 80. Cumberland, the Daniel Boone Parkway at the time. And shot and killed with his own gun. Now, unlike Joe's homicide, where there was witnesses that saw Joe trying to arrest Barnett, I think that was his name. I think his name was William Barnett. He went up for parole several times, and he finally died in prison. Kentucky denied his parole every time. He died in prison. Johnny Edrington's was different. There was no witnesses to Johnny Edrington's death. He died on the side of the road, beside of his car, in front of his car, in the ditch. And a lot of speculation. Now, some people says, "Oh, there's no. I never heard this. I never heard it was called suicide." Well, you wasn't in the circle because that's what everybody was saying, especially the Kentucky State Police troopers at that time that worked that area. They wasn't holding press conferences. They wasn't saying it out loud, but in the law enforcement community. Now, we're not here to discuss how Johnny died
Okay.
and all that. We're going to, at the end of the second video, we'll have something
Yeah.
for Commissioner Philip Barnett, Commissioner of the State Police. But everybody can have their own conclusion to this. You can watch that video right there. You can watch the medical examiner. You can watch Doug Asher. That was the post commander of Post 11. That's Post 11 there in London. That's where he was over that post. Doug Asher, retired KSP Lieutenant Colonel, says his death was a suicide, not a homicide as reported. That's what he says in his book.
Wow.
Dead from a gunshot wound to the head. On duty death. In the line of duty, he died. You know what happens when you die in the line of duty? Funerals paid, insurance is paid, a lot of donations, a lot of sympathy donations and such. You know, Doug Asher says, can't solve a homicide that didn't happen. Can't solve a homicide that didn't happen. Doug Asher. He says, all agreed it was self-inflicted. Everybody at the post, where's your clip? Down here it is, ain't it?
Yeah.
Can you
Wow.
reach it? That's That's
Yeah.
the notes we made earlier.
I'll reach and get it here in just a second.
Says all agreed that it was self-inflicted.
Wow.
And then on there somewhere it's talking about it. It says the coroner.
Here.
It says the coroner, the post commander. It's not that big. It's not over through there.
It's all right.
It's your writing.
Oh, my right. Okay. Yeah, sorry.
I was going to type that up. But they all agreed that it was self-inflicted in that area, in that command up there. And they were relieved. They were pulled off the case. Now, was it too embarrassing to the state police that a trooper committed suicide? Look at the publicity you can get. Everybody wears their dress uniforms. You know, you just had a inline duty death a month before. Not even a month. Joe died on December, and Johnny died the 20th of December. So it's not 3 days shy of a month.
Wow.
Reporter says that she talked to several who confirmed this story. Now, in that video, you've seen Doug Asher, former state trooper, or at least he was when they did this story. And the Laurel County coroner was actually, it's in your notes.
Yeah.
But he was actually with his dad. His dad was the coroner
At that time.
in 1988 that investigated this death.
Yeah.
And he was with his dad. He was with his dad. He was there on the call with his father when they went there. Doug Asher says, the author of this book and the one-time post commander of Post 11 in London, and went on up higher in ranks after that. But if anybody here considers this anything other than a homicide, they don't need to be working at this post. He says that's what they were told at Post 11 when they got back there. Doesn't say who that was told by, but he says, and it may be in his book, but he says in that video right there you just watched, that if anybody here says this is anything other than a homicide, you don't need to be working here. But he says Edrington still had the gun in his hand. Watchcott says that. Doug Asher says that. No sign of a struggle. I remember when this happened. No sign of a struggle. Uniform was intact. Not even a button was missing. There was no set of tire tracks. There was a trooper's car where Johnny had pulled his car over to the side of the road. There was no tire tracks. if I remember correctly, where he had anybody pulled over. Blue lights, if I remember correctly, I think the blue lights were activated. And you got to understand, police officers have a lot of time to sit and study and think about things. And so,
Well, the ones that didn't agree with this, they were removed from the case, which was the coroner and the local pathologist.
okay.
They were removed from the case.
And that was what Asher said. Yeah, they were removed. There was no struggle. The lights were on. There was no radio call. You know, this is after midnight. See, at midnight, I don't know if they still do it now or not. I imagine they do, but for years and years, as long as I've ever known, the KSP always does a midnight check. Always at midnight, they'll holler out to the troopers, so-and-so, who's working, so-and-so, report in, so-and-so, report in. And when they report in, they'll say 10-4, Casey County, 10-4, London, Main Street, 10-4, London PD, 10-4. He's telling them that he's 10-4 and he's giving his location of where he was at midnight. They couldn't get a hold of Trooper Edrington at the midnight check-in.
Okay.
So they started sending people out to look for him. Finally, somebody found him at 2-something in the morning on the side of 80. You know, I read a thing one time where somebody said they passed by and saw his car sitting there with the lights on, and they kept on going, and then they went wherever they had to go, and they come back a while later. It was quite a while, and the cruiser was still there, and they thought to themselves, boy, paperwork, that must take a long time to do, because they thought he was writing a ticket or something. They didn't know he was in the ditch dead, I don't imagine.
Wow.
No sign of a struggle. He was shot right in front of the head, according to Asher. Heavy. Said they tested his gun residue 3 times on his hands. Heavy amount of gun residue on his hands. That's the doctor who performed the autopsy, Dr. John Huntsinker, medical examiner. Initially was going to list the cause of death as undetermined. He says, this one, the corner there says, you're never going to find the person who killed Trooper Edrington unless you dig up his grave.
Well, he knew what happened, so why would he say undetermined? Because he had to?
Well, he didn't want to go against the state police.
Okay.
He didn't want to go against the state police. You know, why did they want to call it a line of duty death? We're going to get to that. Coroner says it was concluded early on that it was a homicide, but they had to stick to that. That was the official line. You've heard the old saying, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And that's what they did. It was concluded early on that it was a homicide, and they had to stick with that, even though they knew.
That's why they removed the coroner then. And
from what retired Lieutenant Colonel Doug Asher is saying, they ruled it a homicide. Now, Trooper Asher there, Lieutenant Colonel, says it's time. It's time. 35 years later, he writes a book about this story, and he says it's time. Now, I'm sorry, but the time was then. The time was 35 years ago to stand up and be counted. You don't retire, write a book 35 years later and tell that a crime happened, and I think I'll write a book about it now. See, it takes something special, guys, to stand up in law enforcement when you know that you're going against the grain. It takes somebody special to do that, special mentally retarded or special in character and dignity and morals. Take someone special to stand up and tell the truth when you know you're going to lose your job when you do it. He says, even though it's late, it's the right thing to do. Well, If it's the right thing to do 35 years later, it was the right thing to do December the 21st, 1988. It was the right thing to do when he was the post commander. That's me talking. He said, even though it's late, it's the right thing to do. And I say it was the right thing to do when he was the post commander of Post 11. 35 years later, the truth is the only way to go. That's Mr. Asher. 35 years later, the truth is the only way to go, he says. Easy way out of everything is to tell the truth. That was his words. The easy way out of everything is to tell the truth, is it? Is that the easy way out? Why didn't he tell the truth back in 1988?
When this first happened.
When it first happened. Why didn't he tell the truth then? If it's the easy thing to do is to tell the truth. Laughable. Laughable. It's not the easy thing to do. It's the hard thing to do when you're going against the grain, when you're going against the department, when you're going against the good old boys that's telling you to say something else and you fall right into the clique and you go along with them. Because now, instead of being part of the solution, you're part of the problem. But 35 years later, I think I'll write a book. I think I'll put this in there. Because, see, I'm not going to debate Johnny's death. We're going to give the state police the opportunity to prove either what Doug Asher's saying or that he's a liar. Somebody's not telling the truth. State police are saying that Johnny Edrington was killed, and they're not going to rest until they find his killer. Doug Asher, the post commander, his boss at the time, he worked for Post 11. He says that suicide. 35 years later selling a book. How can a person call it an honorable career and call a suicide a homicide? How can you do that? I mean, you can do it. I told you the other day, somebody once told this cop was charging him with the crime. He said, you can't charge me with that. He said, I can charge you with murder. I may not be able to prove it, but I can charge you for it and arrest you for it. Questions? Probably some of you's already come up with by now yourselves. Insurance fraud. Kentucky has no time and limitations on felonies. Insurance fraud is a felony, especially for the amount of a life insurance policy. I don't know how much life insurance policies they have on Kentucky State Police troopers. I would assume it's up there pretty good. I'm just guessing, but I'd say around $250,000, maybe more, maybe less. No time limitations, though, on prosecuting people that's defrauded insurance companies. Life insurance payout, taxpayers pay out what the state of Kentucky gave. Private donations for the line of duty. Imagine the people. Not that people wouldn't give whether the person committed suicide or not, but they wouldn't
Just
have felt
out
as
of
much
respect.
sympathy. There wouldn't have been as many donations for somebody that committed suicide as there would funeral homes. A lot of funeral homes, I don't know about this one. Don't even know who it was under. A lot of funeral homes will bury an officer for free if he's killed in a line of duty. They do that just for they do it out of the goodness of their heart, but they also do it for the
good.
recognition. Police officer being killed gets a lot of recognition, a lot of advertisement for the funeral home.
Sad.
In the foreword of this book, that's all I could see in the Amazon. You can go to Amazon, look the book up and read the foreword. It says, birth a story of resilience, honor, and unwavering spirit. Honor. See, I was a police officer for 40 years. I've seen it all. Honor. See, to me, maybe we've got a different definition of honor. That's not honor. If you know something's not right and you don't speak up, you're part of it. Goes on down, it says, returning home, he joins the ranks of Kentucky State Police, dedicating 3 decades to the pursuit of justice his illustrious career. Now listen, I'm not on here this is not pick on Doug Astronaut, but I'm here to tell you, pursuit of justice, illustrious career, about legend in your own mind, maybe, because that's not a pursuit of justice. Pursuit of justice would have been standing up and been counted 35 years ago. Illustrious career would have been whether he ended that night or 35 years later, that he took and faced the music and said, hey guys, know what you're trying to do here, but this ain't right. We're state police officers. We're law enforcement. We're bigger than this. We can take up donations. We can have fundraisers. We can help his family. We can bury him. We can do everything we need to do. But let's call it where the evidence leads us. So I have no respect as a former police officer for that man there in that gray uniform. I used to think those guys were like FBI agents. I used to think they walked on water. I don't think that way no more. And if you know why, are you kicking me? If you want to know why, guys, Google Kentucky State Police. Kentucky State Police troopers arrested. Kentucky State Police commissioners arrested. Kentucky State Police majors arrested. Google it and get ready for your computer to start scrolling, because it's on. From buying illicit drugs on duty to anything, from wife beating to child abuse, to selling guns, to stealing guns and ammo, to, I mean, it's just even the commissioner we got right now. Even the commissioner that we got right now, there's a YouTube video out there where he arrested a man sitting in his driveway, sitting in his car, and then he goes to court and he's sued over it. And you can see the deposition, and tell me, watch this man under oath. Watch him give his statements, and you be the judge. That's the commissioner of the state police today in 2025, Philip Barnett Jr. Google, he'll come up. Reviews for the book. Before I go into that, I want to explain to you how I know so much about the Johnny Edrington case.
Okay.
Back in 88, that was one of the biggest years for police officers being killed. There was a lot of police officers killed in 88. We done a lot of research on that. And a lot of them was being killed with their own guns. Myself, Paul Hatfield, a detective with the Pike County Sheriff's Department, along with me, I was a detective, and our K-9 officer, Barry McCoy, my brother, he was our K-9 guy. The three of us went to a West Virginia class. It was called West Virginia Street Survival. It was put on by the West Virginia Troopers Association. And this was in 89. I think it's the first part of February 23rd and 24th of 89. And that class there was for Tactical Edge Seminar. That was edged weapons and different things like that you could be attacked with, and the 21 foot law and different things that you would. And then the WIN seminar. This was on the 25th. This was a separate. It was a 3-day seminar put on by the West Virginia State Police Association. This was just a couple of months after Johnny Edrington and Joseph Angelucci was killed. We went to the first 2 days of classes. Wow. Boring class. Boring. I don't know how much they paid for that class. I think $300 or $400 a piece for each one of us, and it was boring. And all it was is, if you're ever attacked or somebody tries to get your gun, keep the will to live. Keep the will to live. That's over and over and over all day long. If you get in a fight, keep the will. Well, you can learn that in any good martial arts class. You can learn that in the United States Marine Corps. You can learn that in any kind of self-defense class. Keep the will to live. For 2 days, we listened to that. That second day, at night, we went up to the lounge up on the top floor of the hotel there. And they were not only having this police seminar there for police officers, this class, but Brett Michaels, Poison. That was back in the 80s. They were big. That's when they were coming up. They were performing at the Huntington or Charleston Civic Center, and they stayed in the same hotel all these police officers did. We were in the lounge, and Brett Michaels comes in along with Ricky Rocket and comes over and sits with me and Paul Hatfield and Barry, my brother. And we started talking about the Hatfields and McCoys, and we had some good laughs on him meeting a real Hatfield and two McCoys and so forth like that. And he thought that was really something. And one of us, Paul or myself or Barry, I don't remember which one, but one of us gave him a pair of handcuffs as a souvenir. We gave him our business cards. Everybody always wanted Hatfield McCoy business cards, detectives. And there was an incident happened with those handcuffs later that night and early in the morning hours after we'd done gone in. But that was the talk of the hotel the next day. But so we got up next morning, or got ready to get up. Barry got up. He went to class. Me and Paul, we decided we'd heard enough. We didn't go to class the third day. And we laid around the hotel there, and I kept talking about how that class kept emphasizing, keep the will to live, keep the will. And I thought, poor old Joe Angelucci, do you think that he didn't have the will to live? Do you think that he didn't have the will to live? Now, on Johnny Edrington, it was a little bit different because we had heard differently that it may not have been a homicide, that it may have been a suicide. So I don't know what his mentality was. I don't know. But I knew Joe Angelucci well. I couldn't see going and sitting in a class another day and hearing them talk about the will to live. And I said, they got to be something. Police officers are not that smart, so we got to have some help. We need an aid, something to help us retain our guns. And I started thinking about, remember the little keychain that they used to have with I guess they still have it. It's got the little thing on it you pull. And I started thinking, now, what if a person was to make that strong enough to hold a gun, strong enough to retrieve a gun, keep you from losing your gun, or somebody from taking your gun? So I sat there with pencil and paper instead of going to class. I sat there and I drew up a design for my hand shakes, guys. Back surgery, and it's caused some paralysis or something. But
I'll include it at the end of the video.
You can take a picture of that. But it was in every magazine, TV. We was all over the place. We developed it along with my dad, Paul Hatfield, Barry, my brother Rick, my other brother Naaman. Every one of us got involved, and we made that. And here's what came of it. Not everybody has patent, but that's what that is. And that tells about the retriever. And if you'll see up there in the top right hand corner, it's McCoy. That's Fred McCoy. And there's the patent number. You can Google patent number 5,000 022. April 23rd, 1991. And it shows the design and the patent. There's the coil. There's the way that it, and tells about it. So we received a patent on that. And I don't have my real gun in here, so I've got one here just to show you. So the thing on the back is not what it looks like for the attaches to your gun. But there's the retriever. Here's one in a package. Hold that up, babe.
There you go.
That's what they were going to sell like. And there's the retriever. Now, what it does, when you pulled your gun, hold that belt right there.
Gotcha.
Just as fast as you can pull back, it never gets tangled up. People used to say, well, what if it gets tangled around your arm when you're trying to put it up? It can't get tangled. You can take that little clip right there and hook it onto the bumper of a car. Strong enough, that little cable, strong enough to pull a vehicle with. We've done it. We made videos. We had, bad thing is, police officers are better at being police officers, I guess, than marketing. Didn't go anywhere. Didn't go anywhere. Everybody that evaluated, all the police officers that carried it, loved it, got nothing but praise, but we didn't know how to market it. That was my point, though. That came about from Johnny Edrington and Joseph Angelucci. So I remember Johnny's name well and the circumstances. The one thing that was never mentioned was suicide. Somebody had wrote under one of these reviews, and you can look at it under Amazon. The one thing that nobody ever mentioned was suicide. Not one person who worked that case or saw the crime scene photos so much as uttered a word about suicide. Well, I beg to differ with this person, because that was the word. That was the word on the street, or at least among police officers. So for the post commander, he makes a comment there about the...
Maybe that's who he was talking about, didn't utter, was the higher ups didn't say it because...
Exactly. That's what I was getting to. He says in there that he says, if anybody says this was anything other than a homicide, hit the road. You don't belong here. He says that's what his higher uppers said. Again, I've had higher uppers like that. You either take a stand or you turn into one of them. You can't be both. You can't be honorable and do things that's not honorable. You can't do that. You can say that. You can fool yourself into thinking that. That's not honorable to me. He was affectionately called by London troopers. He called this guy doing the review, called Doug Asher, a name. That's on reviews on Amazon. Do some homework. Talk to some KSP troopers working in 88. Not Frankfurt's Dr. Hollis whatever his name is, Hutzinger, who added his 2 cents for the powder residue. Guys, powder residue doesn't lie. You either have powder residue on your hands or you don't. If you commit a suicide, you're going to have powder residue on your head. You're going to have powder residue on your hands. I don't doubt that this man with 2 tours in Vietnam, I don't doubt that he don't know what he was investigating. One guy here says in a minute that he's one of the best. Let's just read it. This guy says, chapter about Johnny Edrington was tough to read for me. I was in a position for a time. Sorry, let's go back 1 minute.
Okay.
Where this guy here says, do your homework. Talk to the KSP troopers who were working in 88. Well, did you not hear Lee Searcy? She said she talked to these 2 and she talked to others.
Several.
Not everybody, several others. Not everybody wants to be on camera, especially retired troopers. You know, the thing about troopers, it's like law enforcement used to be the world's best kept secret. The thing about troopers, they usually, that name, you will hear that name consecutively in law enforcement, in the KSP. I was a police officer for 40 years. I knew troopers with the same name 40 years ago that's still out there today. Sons, grandsons, great-grandsons. They usually pass it on. They make connections and they say, hey, my son's 21 next month. Like, get them in the state. Sure, bring them in. And they pass it on. You've got the same people that their sons and grandsons are now troopers. So even though these people didn't speak publicly, they spoke to Lee Searcy, according to her. But this next one says, Johnny Edrington was a tough read for me. I was in a position for a time in my career to read and study the case. I also able to speak to some of the investigators who were there in 1988, as well as many others who worked in the same county as Edrington. They all say the same thing as Asher. They say the same thing this guy says. And that's what I say. I agree. This next one here was, if it's correct, on Amazon, it says Captain Gail Wilms, KSP retired. And this person gives 5 out of 5 stars for this book, February the 5th, 2024. Paraphrasing, coming down here, it says, I worked with Doug Asher, Sr. He was without a doubt one of the best investigators ever produced by KSP. What caused Johnny Edrington's death? I don't know. I've never read the report. I don't know that extraordinary steps. I do know that extraordinary steps were taken to prevent KSP personnel and investigators from having access to the file by headquarters personnel. The file remains locked in a file cabinet to this day, with only one person holding the key. Why? Read the book. Make your own decisions, that person says. Why? Who holds that key? Who is in charge of the Kentucky State Police? Let me guess here. I'd say probably the commissioner. Probably the commissioner of the state police. Better yet, this is me talking. Why doesn't KSP Commissioner Philip Barnett Jr. release the file on the trooper's death? 35 years. Been long enough, guys. You're not going to find no killer. You maybe find them when you find OJ, who killed Nicole and Ron Goldman. Maybe you're like OJ, you're still looking for the killer. You can fool people like that if you want, or you can release the file. So the only people, according to that captain, only people that sees that file is ever who's the commissioner of state police.
That's got the key to the.
That's got the key to that personal safe or file. It's not even in the personnel thing. It's locked away. It's not an open case. As long as they keep an open road on it, they never have to show nobody. It's not open to public records. Is that really the way we want to run the Kentucky State Police? Yeah, it is. I'm sorry to say, guys. After I seen what I seen when we found Joseph Couch over there, and how I feel you, babe. After I seen, I've seen things in my career.
Sure.
That wasn't, but I had no control over that. That's a different agency. But yeah, state police is not. So the public can read for themselves instead. Guys, Kentucky Revised Statute 304.47.020. Insurance fraud. Insurance fraud. Who was the post commander back then? Who was the troopers that finally investigated it and wrote down that it was a homicide? Who was the medical examiner? If the autopsy and the medical exam finally wrote, instead of undetermined, it says homicide, who did that? Who did that? If everything in this file, in that file, the other troopers, and according to Doug Asher, he said he spoke up. They took him moved him out. Him in the corner, and somebody else she read
The
about,
local
medical
pathologist.
examiner. Who?
Pathologist.
Local pathologist. Did the insurance pay? Now, Johnny was killed somewhere around White Oak Road and Kentucky 80. There on 80. Comments. I think they called it. This is comments from other people.
Okay.
I think they called it a homicide so the family can get the insurance. And I understand that. Trying to help the family has enough to deal with besides trying to pay bills at this time. Really? Everyone needs money. Can we rob a bank? Can't do something illegal to get it. Have donations, have fundraisers. But you can't falsify reports, guys. Did you hear that statement? Now, somebody's got a good heart, probably, and they're thinking they've had it hard enough. The family has.
Yeah.
They need the insurance money. They need help to pay bills. Really? Everybody needs help to pay bills. Me and Sheila needed help so bad. We went out looking for a mass shooter. We didn't know that he'd done off to himself the first night. We didn't know that. We were out there looking for a live person with a bang bang. So you'll do a lot of things when you need money, but you've got to do them honestly. Another person says it looked like he had pulled over a vehicle because his lights were on, but he never called in that he was pulling anybody over, which from what I understand is something they always do. Of course, of course, it's protocol. It's mandatory, especially for the state police. Why didn't he call his traffic stop with the tag number? Midnight's the most dangerous time. After midnight, most dangerous time for a patrol officer in the dark.
It's hard to see. Yeah.
Everyone that was involved in covering this up as a suicide should be convicted. That was somebody else's. That's not me, but I agree with it. I might as well wrote that because that's about as much insurance fraud as anything you're ever going to see. And I'm sure that it was. If the insurance policy was paid,
Yeah.
a death insurance policy, and it was written up as in the line of duty death, because in the line of duty death, the government and the state also pitches in and gives you money, not just your life insurance, but you'll also get money from the federal and state.
So if this does come out eventually, whatever, will this family have to reimburse what was given
No, it's
back
got
to
nothing
them?
to do
Or-
with the family.
Okay.
It's got nothing to do with the family.
Bless their hearts.
Got some pictures there of Johnny, of
Yeah.
a memorial of Johnny's police car back in
His
the old days
cruiser.
when we had the old white cruisers. His tombstone,
I can add that stuff to the end.
if you don't care,
Yeah.
as a memorial to him. He still served,
Yeah.
no matter what took him out, he still served. And they could have done this back then. They could have still given him an admirable. Police work is hard work. Just like military. Look at the suicides in military that take place.
Mm-hmm.
There he is shaking hands with George Bush.
Senior. Looks like.
There'll be one more. I wanted to keep this under an hour, and I believe we're going to be able to do it.
I don't know. By the time I add the pictures and stuff.
Well, there's going to be a part 2, guys. After
Yeah.
we go through the book, I'm sure there's going to be more stuff in the book that they didn't cover on the TV that we couldn't see. But now that you've listened to this, if you would go back and at least the video's only 5 minutes long. The news footage, it's only 5 minutes. Go back and listen to it again. Sit back in your chair. Listen to it word for word. Listen to him. Listen to the coroner. This is insurance fraud. And, or at least it needs to be investigated by the Attorney General's office or somebody. It needs to be investigated. These accusations have been made by a credible. He's drawn a state police retirement. So he left the state police in good standing as a lieutenant colonel. There's his badge. Lieutenant colonel's high as you can go. That's it.
Wow.
He left credibly. He's saying that this was a suicide. What's he call that? Sheila in that title. Remember that title?
Cover up.
The
big gray cover
The
up.
big gray cover up.
Yeah, I like that
The
title.
big gray cover up. Pressure from those above him.
He had pressure above him. Yeah.
Evidence is what made the post.
The evidence is what made him conclude that it was a homicide, and I mean not a homicide.
Wow. So we run across this story as we were researching. We didn't know the book was out. This book's been out for a year now, probably.
Yeah.
We didn't know it. We run across it while researching the search warrant that was served by London PD there and the controversy going on up there. And this came up.
Yeah.
London's a beautiful community, beautiful town, and beautiful people. Just because we're doing stories on London, that just happens to be where the stories are leading right now. And that just happens to be where Johnny Edrington was stationed out of, worked out of, and where he...
No, it's
Yeah, it's my phone.
you're receiving a call.
And where his demise was.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how, he's deceased.
Yeah, it's sad.
Guys, please comment below if you remember, older like I am, and you remember 1988, and you remember when this happened there in London. I'm sure you people that live close there do. You may even be able to enlighten us. We need to get Philip Barnett Jr., Mr. I'm biting it.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Biting it hard.
Good.
We need to get the State Police Commissioner, Philip Barnett Jr., to release the file. Let's see how honorable he is. Let's see what kind of commissioner he is. Let's see if he wants to clear the air and either dispute what this trooper says, or he may look at the file and say, hey guys, let's relook at this. Let's relook at it. Put your best detectives on it and say, let's look at this. We believe maybe this was the other way around. Okay, he's buried and in the ground. The family got the insurance and so forth, but at least you can correct the wrong of what took place back then. If what Doug Asher is saying is true, and hard as it is, I believe him. I believe what he's saying is true. I believe that Mr. Edrington actually did that from the evidence that the troopers back then, what was going around. Now, again, can my mind change? Of course. It's just like seeing that affidavit for that search warrant in London that's now 17 days without. Things like that can change a person's mind. Once you see something, I'm not saying my mind's set in the solid. I can be convinced differently, but you've got to show us some evidence. You can't hide the file in a filing cabinet and say, oh, it's still open. It's still under investigation. We're gonna get him. No, you're not. You heard the coroner. You heard what he said. That's the man that knows. That's the man that investigates death. That's the man that knows about it. Everybody's got their specialties out there. That's his. And Trooper Asher knows. He was at post 11. He knows. That was his post. That was his man. Said Johnny was a good guy.
And his parents were
great.
good.
We're good. There's a lot of good guys out there serving. There's a lot of good parents out there. But we can't lie. We can't deceive. We can't defraud insurance companies because of that. Be no different than somebody putting their car over the hill and then saying, hey, will you fill out an insurance form for me so I can get my insurance? That's defraud. That's insurance fraud. Sheila, I wish you'd let me talk a little bit.
I know it. I can't help it. I just talk.
No, thank you for letting me have it without
it's fine.
interrupting a lot, because I wanted to say that. Part 2 will probably be short.
Yeah.
Unless we hear something from the state police and they say, hey, we're going to relook at this. I hope they do. I really do. I think that would help people bring back some credit to them that they have lost over the years because of things that's happened. You're up, babe.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like, subscribe, and share. Stay warm, by the way. God bless.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good night.